Hello and welcome to the Steamy, the Scotsman's Politics podcast. We are deep in the Scottish Parliament's summer recess with MSPs not due to return to Holyrood until the start of next month. Traditionally, this is silly season. It's a time when more light-hearted fare dominates the pages of newspapers, although there's been plenty of politics and politics-adjacent stuff going on too, and we thought it might be quite useful to do a recess roundup of some of the big stories we've been writing about over recent days and weeks. And to do that, I'm joined by Catriona Stewart, the Scotsman's education correspondent, by David Ball, deputy political editor, by Andrew Quinn, Westminster correspondent, and by Rachel Amery, political correspondent. Catriona, I'll start with you because we're recording this on A-level results day, a time when ageing middle-aged journalists on social media love to wax lyrical about the results they got decades ago in the mistaken belief that anyone under 30 is still on Twitter. But of course, pupils in Scotland received their National 5 advanced higher exam results last week. What do we need to know about that?
Well, it was a big year this year because we have a new Cabinet Secretary for Education, Mary McCallan, who's taken over for Jenny Gilruth. And it's the first year that the Scottish Qualifications Authority is in the bin, SQA's gone, and it's been replaced by Qualifications Scotland. So the first year for Qualifications Scotland to deal with the exam results. So there was a bit of edge of the seat, bated breath around that, people waiting for something to go wrong. And if it had gone wrong, it would have been a disastrous start for Mary McCallan. It seemed like everything went pretty smoothly. Sometimes it takes a few days for patterns to emerge, for problems to emerge, but actually it went off without a hitch. So that was good. Luckily, also for Mary McCallan, attainment levels were up this year. They weren't up by loads, but it gave her a good line to come out in the morning, defend the government's progress and say that everything was going well. And also the poverty-related attainment gap, which is one of the major issues for the Scottish Government, thanks to Nicola Sturgeon's declaration 10 years ago, is closing, but it is closing at such a glacial pace that, yes, again, Mary McCallan could come out and say, we are closing the poverty-related attainment gap. But last year, the narrowing of the gap at higher level was 0.1%. This year, it was 0.9%. 10 years ago, Nicola Sturgeon promised to close that. It hasn't shut. It was meant to have closed by 2026. And I have a handy prop for anybody watching on YouTube. I have a copy of Nicola Sturgeon's Frankly. And there's a line in Frankly about the poverty-related attainment gap that I must have read about 100 times. And I was worried that I wasn't going to be able, this is really sad and pathetic, I was worried I wasn't going to be able to find the right line in the book. And I picked up a copy of the book and actually I have bookmarked it with an envelope because it just, I don't know, it kind of summarises the problem with so much of Scottish politics to me. So Nicola Sturgeon in her book talks about closing the poverty-related attainment gap. And she says, I also came to understand that closing the poverty-related attainment gap is only possible if we do more to tackle poverty itself. I can't believe she actually committed that line to paper because it is the very definition of no shit. And the Scottish Government will say that Scotland is the only part of the UK where child poverty is being alleviated, where it is lessening. It's not lessening fast enough. They're not moving fast enough on this. And I think overall, this year was a good report card for the Scottish Government, for Mary McCallan. She can breathe a sigh of relief. There are so many things in her portfolio that need to be tackled. She has a difficult year coming up from at all level, from nursery right up to further and higher education. But the poverty-related attainment gap is not closing fast enough. They need to be doing far more to support schools, to support young people, to achieve better. So yeah, I think the sort of summary is a decent report card for the Scottish Government, but I would say at the end of that, must try harder.
I'm really glad you highlighted that line in Nicola Sturgeon's book because it is absolutely mental. I just don't understand what she was getting at when she wrote that. I mean, anyone who has even got a passing sort of knowledge of this would know that you need to tackle poverty to tackle the poverty-related attainment gap. So I'm not sure why this came as news to the First Minister of Scotland or something that she had to come to realise in time. But thank you very much for that. And we should probably touch on the main Scottish political news story at the moment. I think the thing that's kind of troubling the political pages in newspapers the most, which is the Scottish Labour leadership election. I appreciate people watching this might not be as glued to this as we are, but you were at the hustings event in Glasgow on Wednesday night, David, when we heard from all three hopefuls for the top job, Michael Mara, Joe Fagan, Monica Lennon. What were they saying?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It's never going to be that thrilling, I guess, is the honest. Unless you remember, obviously, you've got more investment, but got to see Joe Fagan in the flesh for the first time. A lot of people would walk past him in the street. I still might, to be perfectly honest, but it was quite interesting that he was using some of the phrases we heard Anna Sawa use during the election about kind of pushing the power out. It was like the exact same rhetoric, but he got a bit, not angry, but he was very passionate at one point, very kind of trade unionist, if that makes sense to our listeners. But that was quite interesting. Also, Michael Mara, who a lot of people within the Scottish Labour were kind of blaming to some extent for the kind of humiliating election defeat, given how confident they were going into that, was quite candid. I didn't really expect him to be that open about how bad it really was. And he even said that he was told that he was going to win in Dundee, which is obviously one of the safest seats for the SNP, if not the safest place for the SNP. So it kind of brought across this kind of atmosphere of delusion within Labour at the time, which I didn't expect to come from him, because he obviously had a key role in the manifesto, was a frontbencher, unlike the other two when we went to the polls. But I think he was maybe trying to distance himself from Anna Sawa's leadership. He's very much seen as the guy whose turn it is next after Anna Sawa, and I think he was trying to create a bit of distance. Monica Lennon as well was very scathing of the kind of past leaderships, as you would kind of expect. Policy-wise, we didn't get any real answers. Monica Lennon actually sitting on the fence on some of the issues we would expect her to maybe have a difference with her opponents on oil and gas. We've heard from Joe Fagan and Michael Mara that they would support Rosebank and Jackdaw, which Anna Sawa did. It's the Scottish Labour position. Obviously puts them a bit at odds with the UK government. Monica Lennon, instead of saying we shouldn't do that, which she, in the past over Cambo and other developments, she's been very, we shouldn't do this, we don't need these on kind of climate grounds. She basically said, well, the UK government is best placed to look at these. They've got all the evidence and we should kind of leave it up to them. So maybe trying to kind of step back a little bit from being quite so different and being a bit more reflective on it was quite interesting as well. But it'd be interesting. There's going to be quite a few of these hustings that we will have to sit through over the coming weeks. I think there's a few planned for next week. So the key thing now is waiting to see who actually makes it onto the ballot, because all three of them might not be there when we get to next week.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, isn't it, Andrew, that this could be the last hustings with three Scottish Labour leadership candidates.
Yeah, I mean, the most likely person to drop out of the race is Monica Lennon, because she doesn't have the required nominations from party colleagues. So, yeah, you need 3 MPs, 3 MSPs, including herself. So, yeah, she needs 2 other MSPs. She's got one of our Holyrood colleagues, Katie Clark's backed her. She's looking for another. There's only one possible option. Carol Mockin is still to say who she's backing. And if you're looking left and right in Labour, you would think she'd automatically support Monica Lennon, but they disagree on trans issues, and Carol Mockin was sacked from the front bench for opposing GRR. Monica Lennon was very in favour of the gender recognition reforms, so makes it quite difficult. It's hard to tell. It's hard to imagine if Carol Mockin was the one person that could get Monica onto the ballot. It's hard to imagine that she wouldn't do it. The word is, and I think I said this last week, that Carol Mockin's on holiday as well, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. Apparently she's not as contactable as she might have been. But also Monica Lennon needs another MP backing her. There's only a handful who haven't publicly said who they are supporting. And as far as I can tell, there's probably only two out of them who would politically potentially back her. And that would be Lillian Jones, the Kilmarnock MP, or Patricia Ferguson, who's Glasgow West. Now, they might be kind of soft left of the party and wouldn't disagree with her on a lot of issues, but it's probably quite a bold move from them and could get them relatively ostracised from lots of other people who think Monica Lennon shouldn't be standing, because they see her as like a bit of a Jeremy Corbyn type figure who, once she gets in the ballot, could really win loads of votes. There was quite a significant moment, though, for Michael Mara this week. There had been a bit of debate over whether he would get the required trade union endorsements. You need 2 trade unions to back you. And there had been quite a lot of word, people within unions that I'd spoken to, that he wasn't going to get the support of like the GMB and USDA, which were seen as ones that he would perhaps need. There's kind of 3 more moderate unions, Community's the other one. So it looked like him and Joe Fagan would have those unions split. But actually, Michael Mara's managed to come out with 2 other unions that you might not have expected to back him. So ASLEF, which is the train drivers union, seen as a bit more of a left-wing union and seen as ones that would back Monica Lennon, actually came out and backed Michael Mara. And the National Union of Mine Workers, which obviously don't have a lot of members at the moment, because we've got some gold mines in the north of Scotland that we've not got the same mining that we used to have. But I think the former members, so people who were former mine workers, can vote in it. So they've backed Michael Mara as well. So it means he's confirmed on the ballot. So we know at least he's got a chance. Joe Fagan's still to get any of the trade union backing, but I think it would be expected. So it means there's not going to be a coronation, which we kind of thought might happen at some point. So yeah, so there's definitely there should be a contest. But yeah, the nominations close on Monday. So we'll find out whether Monica Lennon has managed to make it and Joe Fagan getting the union endorsements, but we think that should happen.
Well, away from Scottish Labour into the Scottish Greens, the Green MSP Q Manavanan has apologised after comments in which they talked of the demonisation of rape, suggested that rape is a spectrum of things. Rachel, you've written about this. Can you explain what this row is all about? Because maybe people who've read perhaps some of these news stories, his comments were quite sort of confusing.
Yeah, so Keith Manavanan has been in the news quite a lot since they were elected back in May for various different reasons, but very much in the news this week because of these comments. This was a podcast about a year ago. It was about a year ago, but the comments were resurfaced at the weekend. And it was quite a sort of I suppose an academic discussion is probably the best way to sort of describe it, about rape. And as you were saying, 2 of the comments that seems to really be sticking in people's minds is this idea that rape is a spectrum and that rape is being demonised. Now, it's caused a lot of upset. There's been a lot of calls for Q to have the whip removed, for the Scottish Green leaders, Gillian Mackay and Ross Greer, to get involved as well and to make public statements. At this point, that hasn't happened. There's been lots of rape crisis charities and sort of workers as well trying to explain why these comments are unhelpful as well, which would be some quite powerful statements from some of these branches as well. You were saying there was an apology there. It was a strange apology because it was apologising for abstract language as opposed to the comments themselves. And that's perhaps where it all gets a little bit murky, because the idea of abstract language in all of this is quite interesting, because so often when it comes to rape, it's 2 people who know each other and consent has either not been explicitly given or has been ignored. And that's very clear. It's yes and no. It's not an abstract thing. And so this idea of trying to make it abstract kind of maybe takes away from how important it is to think of it as just yes and no. And that's probably where one of the problems has been here, and why some of these rape crisis charities are so upset about it as well, is the fact that it has kind of detracted from what is quite a simple thing, yes or no. I would hope that on the back of it, it maybe does bring up more of a discussion about rape in this country. There is a huge problem with it. We know that there's loads of it gets reported every year. We also know a lot of it doesn't get reported. And we also know that when it does get reported, there's lots of issues as well with the justice system and corroboration and things like that too. So there does need to be have a discussion about rape in this country, because it is a massive, massive problem. And I certainly know that lots of women do not feel safe a lot of the time because of that. This perhaps detracts from all of that, which I think is maybe the problem that's been happening here.
I think one of the other elements that's been less focused on as well, and call me old-fashioned, but I quite like my legislators to have some kind of grasp of the law. Manivannan also referenced women being rapists, and in Scots law and UK law, that's not possible. You have to be male to be a rapist. Women cannot be rapists. And I think that is a really important point, and I would hope that Q Manivannan is using time over the summer to have a look at legislation and get across these really vital issues, because as we all well know, the Scottish Parliament does not have the best record when it comes to drafting and implementing the law.
Something that's definitely not going to go away because it has upset so many people. I imagine that when recess ends and we all go back to Parliament in September, I imagine that plenty of journalists and others will be wanting to get some clarification, I think, on the apology and the words this week. So I don't think it's a story that's going to be going away anytime soon. I think for the wider Green Party as well, there has been some stories in the media the past couple of days about Greens perhaps staying a bit silent because they want to try and distance themselves from the comments, and those in the background of the party not being very happy at all with what's happened this week. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well when we go back to Parliament in September.
Yeah, and just say that Q Manivannan was saying that the comments were selectively edited in order to mislead people and misrepresent me, although they did accept that the language was abstract in the first place, and for that I take full responsibility and am sorry. David, I thought finally we should touch on Ming. I mean, this is something that you have written about a lot. John Swinney has asked Andy Burnham to reconsider the UK government's block on plans by the Chinese firm to build a wind turbine factory in Scotland. Experts have accused the SNP of being shockingly dismissive of national security concerns. Those are the concerns that were the reason this plan was blocked in the first place. I think this is actually a fascinating issue because you've got the UK government on the one hand saying one thing, and you've got the Scottish government saying, well, actually, this is really important for jobs in Scotland and maybe we should take another look at this. But it really gets to the heart of these kind of global concerns about the rise of China, about what that means, about security, about surveillance, about espionage. I mean, it is pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's a really complex one with like the Scottish Highlands at the centre of it. It's strange because we don't know what these concerns are. We just know they're national security and cybersecurity, but a lot of our other infrastructure Chinese companies are involved in. So we can't expect the UK government to come out and tell us exactly what the concerns are, but I think questions about it are legitimate given that we don't really know what the issue is here. There's obviously the Scottish industry part of this. The GMB now wanting another look at this as well this week. They told me that if these concerns can be addressed, then the UK government should look at it. And Andy Burnham's come in and he's wanted to kind of get some easy wins that Keir Starmer wasn't able to get. You might call it populist-like decisions that are very easy to kind of please a lot of people, but if his priority is sort of jobs and economic growth, then I can see the SNP looking at his other kind of changes of heart that he's done quite easily and thinking this is a good opportunity for us to like get him in a corner over this. And John Swinney brought it up when they came up to the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony in that first kind of dialogue, brought up. And what I'm told, and I must say this is from someone close to John Swinney, so bear that and take it with a pinch of salt, that it was quite positive before Douglas Alexander, the Scottish Secretary, kind of put his oar in and said, well, we tried this before, we've looked at everything, you're kind of just wasting your time. So as far as I'm aware, the UK government doesn't have any immediate plans to change their mind, but it depends how much pressure piles on, especially if the unions and other people kind of do get involved. But as you mentioned, there are obvious security concerns about China. It's a very difficult situation for the UK government to navigate. And John Swinney has been briefed on these issues through the Scotland office. They did after he demanded being in the dark about it. So he's making these calls knowing what the security concerns are, unlike us. But I think it is a good political one for the SNP and John Swinney to get their teeth into, because Scottish sort of offshore wind is reliant on these manufacturing jobs. There were so many promises made through the ScotWind project for a certain degree of those jobs and that investment to be done in Scotland, and that just hasn't happened. We don't have, I mean, there's a factory earmarked for Leith, but that has only just come online. It will be a while. And this one is right near Inverness. It's right at the heart of where all these things are being built. Obviously, you don't get a lot of projects where 1,500 jobs are going to be created in the Highlands like that easy, particularly with the oil and gas job situation. It's a huge deal. So I think asking for another look at this is probably sensible, but whether there'll be any movement or not is we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose.
Well, indeed, that was our recess roundup of some of the top stories that we've been working on in the last days and weeks. Please stay tuned to the Scotsman's website for all the latest news, comment, analysis. I think we've got a great subscriber deal on the go at the moment during the Edinburgh festivals, so you can check that out as well. And of course, there is plenty of arts coverage both in the paper and online. But thank you very much for listening or watching.